Rachel Newhouse was a 20-year-old Cal Poly student. She was very outgoing, very athletic, well-liked. Rachel had left a bar restaurant where there was student celebration going on and was walking home.
He was hiding behind one of the beams. He came out, knocked her unconscious.
We immediately called the sheriff's search and rescue team and all of our detectives and began searching.
After that abduction, there was very little to go on. When I let him walk out the doors, he's going into the community, which made me feel very uneasy. His story isn't making sense to me.
It changed the community drastically with the abduction of Rachel Newhouse.
There was a struggle with his second victim, a Cuesta college student, Andrea Crawford.
A lot of folks said, you know, I don't feel I can walk alone at night anymore. It's the largest scale investigation that the police department has ever conducted.
Law enforcement didn't have a crime scene. They didn't have much to go on, and when she was abducted, it was almost like she vanished off the face of the earth.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to San Luis Obispo, California. A serial rapist and murderer would terrify this elegant slice of heaven for 5 long months. Haunted by a task force of investigators, this butcher of young women would slay 2 college students before he was captured. It was a remarkable ordeal for the residents of this paradise by the sea, the polar opposite of typical daily life in this region.
It's the small college town environment. The weather is pretty much it's unbeatable in the state of California. We have beautiful beaches, but we have beautiful landscape. We have mountains, we have trails, we have lakes.
College students flock to one of 2 schools here, Cuesta Community College and California Polytechnic State University.
It's very popular with kids from Orange County, San Diego County, and the Bay Area. Oftentimes they come here vacationing and fall in love with the area, kind of like I did. It has one of the best reputations. It's one of the hardest schools in the Western United States to get into.
Rachel Newhouse got into Cal Poly, but a killer in the dark would make San Luis Obispo her final resting place.
Rachel Newhouse was a 20-year-old Cal Poly student. She was very outgoing, very athletic, involved in track and a number of sports activities at Cal Poly. Very well thought of, well liked, from a close-knit family.
One Thursday in November, Rachel spent part of her evening at a local watering hole called Tortilla Flats, and after an argument with a friend, decided to call it quits.
Rachel had left a bar restaurant where there was a little student celebration going on and was walking home, and it was fairly late.
Deep in the shadows, a prowler monitored her every move.
When she left the immediate downtown area, walked up towards her residential area, she was crossing a bridge that goes over the railroad tracks, known as the Jennifer Street Bridge.
The prowler was looking for the right moment to strike.
He beat her to a certain point on that bridge. There's numerous flights of stairs that lead to the bridge that cross over the railroad tracks. He was hiding behind one of the beams. He came out with from the movie Scream, one of those masks.
Startled, Rachel tried to fight off her attacker, but he overpowered her.
Knocked her unconscious.
Walked her down the steps and to his truck, which was parked right by the bridge, put her in the back of the truck, and drove off with her.
It was almost like she had just vanished. She was walking in the direction of her home, which was a pretty good distance away from that downtown area.
Rachel didn't live by herself, so it wasn't long before someone noticed that she hadn't made it home. Police Captain Bart Topham received a phone call.
They called me early one morning when Rachel's roommates reported her missing.
Investigators pushed hard in their hunt for Rachel Newhouse. They hadn't forgotten about the abduction and disappearance of a different female student 2 years earlier on the Cal Poly campus.
We decided we weren't taking any chances. So we immediately called out the sheriff's search and rescue team and all of our detectives and began searching the entire community and area, and making phone calls and doing the things that you do early on in that kind of investigation.
Although missing college students usually turned up unharmed within a few days, this case stymied law enforcement during its initial stages.
For the first 2 or 3 months, maybe even 4 or 5 months after that abduction, there was very little to go on.
With the help of the FBI, we sent up a command post inside the police department with a number of computers using a new and specialized investigative program that the FBI had developed and that they loaned to us. And we put in a number of our staff assisting FBI agents in the command post, entering all of the contact forms and reports and different things to do with the investigation.
So what tasks did you give this group of investigators?
The teams would each have various kinds of assignments to check out residences, to check out businesses, to check out individuals, interviewing students. We tried to interview everybody that we could identify that was at Tortilla Flats the night Rachel went missing.
But the task force struggled to uncover helpful evidence until a good idea and a lucky break would propel the case forward at lightning speed.
It's the largest scale investigation that the police department has ever conducted.
When I let him walk out the doors, he's going into the community, which made me feel very uneasy.
During the hunt for missing college student Rachel Newhouse, the police department in San Luis Obispo combed through every last part of the rural California town, with additional law enforcement agencies joining the team.
It's probably the largest scale investigation that the police department has ever conducted. We were determined to deal with it as professionally and as aggressively as possible.
The disappearance of a student in a city that hosted 2 popular colleges spooked residents and visitors alike.
It changed the community drastically because something seemed to happen that had never happened before, that they believed wouldn't happen in our community. And the whole community was shook up. So there was constant questions, constant requests for interviews by the media. It was a totally different atmosphere was suddenly created with the abduction of Rachel Newhouse.
So as part of the command staff at the police department, how did this affect you specifically?
At the height of the investigation, I literally could not leave my house, for example, to go to the grocery store to pick something up, without a number of people constantly approaching me, wanting to know what's happening, are they safe to go outside? The entire community had become frightened.
As they hit the road every day, what instructions did you give the task force?
One of the things we did early on was say, this is what we know could be missing in terms of Rachel's purse, the things in the purse, her clothing. You know, we gave all of that information to everybody that was out there interviewing and investigating, and said, you know, keep an eye out for all of these things when you're talking to people, when you go places, particularly people on probation and parole.
A criminal is granted probation instead of being sent to jail, while parole starts after the convict has served a prison sentence. Of course, not every lawbreaker learns his lesson, and some continue pursuing a life of corruption.
You know, that's what ultimately led to Agent Zaragoza, who was one of the local parole agents, and he had a group of people that he was supervising, one of whom was Rex Krebs.
33-year-old Rex Krebs was a registered sex offender who had just spent 10 years in prison for the rape of one young woman and the attempted rape of another. When Rex Krebs was released from prison, his parole agent, David Zaragoza, had a gut feeling that Krebs was still a threat to the women in the community.
So we do what's called a new release interview, and we have a checklist of things that we go through: residents, vehicles, associates, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, things of that nature, gang affiliation. We kind of run it through the parolee again, just to make sure we've covered everything.
So something about Rex Krebs just didn't ring right with you. What was it?
When I finished the new release intake, it was very interesting to me, because when I let him walk out the doors, he's going into the community, which made me feel very uneasy, because he was probably one of about a handful of parolees that had a pretty serious history that was on my caseload.
5 months after Rachel Newhouse dropped out of sight, another female college student vanished, this time out of her home. Around that time, parole agent Zaragoza spotted a newspaper article about the case.
It quoted Captain Bart Topham of the San Luis Obispo Police Department as saying that there was a struggle, it was definitely an abduction.
Zaragoza saw parallels between the two recent abductions of young women and the two sexual assaults committed by Rex Krebs a decade earlier.
There was a struggle with his second victim, and to the point where he almost severed that victim's index finger during that struggle. And that's kind of when I started to take an interest in Krebs' prior case and possibly being involved in this case.
Zaragoza decided to pay his parolee a visit. Krebs was renting a ramshackle two-story house on the outskirts of San Luis Obispo.
At the time, Rex had moved out of town. He lived in a county in a very remote area, very private area. It was living alone.
There was a good reason why Krebs had recently selected such an out-of-the-way place to hide out. It was no longer welcome in his previous neighborhood. In his new, very private home in the hills, Rex Krebs could do whatever he wanted, or so he thought.
I went out to Krebs' residence. I just felt that I needed to take a look at him to see if he had any marks, abrasions, anything that would lead me to believe that maybe he was involved in a struggle.
Zaragoza's instincts were dead on. Rex Krebs was wearing a lower back brace that he'd shimmyed upward to his rib cage, and he had a wobbly excuse for why.
I asked him what happened, and Krebs stated that he was a dumb person and fell off a retaining wall and injured his ribs on firewood that he had placed near the retaining wall.
It was a flimsy explanation, and the parole agent wasn't buying it.
I know that if a person falls into a pile of firewood, there are going to be marks on your hands, your forearms, your elbows, maybe even your face. So as we're having a conversation, I'm looking at his hands, I'm looking at his forearms, I'm looking at his elbows, and there's zero indication of any injuries to any of those body parts.
Lies beget more lies, and Krebs wasn't known for being honest.
His story isn't making sense to me.
With his hunch about Krebs starting to catch fire, David Zaragoza decided to scrutinize the business and personal life of this particular parolee.
And cold cocked her, knocked her down on this metal bridge. At that point, we put more focus on Rex Krebs.
The mysterious disappearance of Rachel Newhouse had law enforcement working overtime to capture her kidnapper. For Rachel's family, every day was a long slog through grief and uncertainty.
I became fairly close with the Newhouse family and talking with them on a regular basis. They were absolutely wonderful, very supportive. I can't say enough about the integrity and the dignity that whole family showed from beginning to end.
Meanwhile, parole agent David Zaragoza pursued his hypothesis that Rex Krebs was somehow involved in Rachel's disappearance, and possibly in the disappearance of a second college student 5 months later. A fresh search of the Krebs home turned up expendables, including CO2 cartridges for a BB gun. It was illegal for a parolee to have a firearm, even a pseudo-weapon like a BB gun.
So I'm basically set up doing surveillance on his place of employment, waiting for Krebs to get there at 7 in the morning. He arrived at 6:50. I followed him in immediately.
Krebs wasn't expecting a visitor at his workplace, least of all, his parole agent.
He was in front of me about 20 steps. He turned around, sees me, and he says, "Hey, Mr. Zaragoza." I said, "Hello, Rex. I need to see that BB gun." I said, what is the location of that BB gun? He said, "It's under the cash register." I asked him to turn around, put his hands behind his back. I put him in handcuffs. I retrieved the BB gun.
The police had what they needed to lock up Rex Krebs and transported him to county jail on a parole violation of possessing a simulated firearm. But law enforcement wasn't sure if Krebs had kidnapped Rachel Newhouse, at least not yet. Additional parole searches at Krebs' house uncovered personal items belonging to both of the missing young women. And forensic DNA testing generated even more data starting on the Jennifer Street Bridge. Whoever kidnapped Rachel Newhouse had inadvertently left investigators a hot clue when he grabbed her.
Crept up behind her and cold cocked her and knocked her down on this metal bridge. She hit her head. There was blood spilled there.
An investigator collected a sample of the blood, which proceeded through DNA testing.
And we later found out that it was Rachel Newhouse's blood.
The police now had a clearer picture of what happened when Rachel Newhouse vanished on that dark night in November, and they had also pulled a bulky but critical piece of evidence from the home of Rex Krebs.
We ended up seizing a jump seat that belonged to the Ford Ranger that Krebs drove during that time.
Here again, DNA testing would produce silent but compelling testimony.
As we took it apart, one of our CSI folks found some blood below the seat, and we matched that up subsequently to Rachel's blood type.
With the evidence piling up, Rex Krebs admitted to raping and murdering Rachel Newhouse and the other young woman who had recently vanished. The justice that followed was swift and final.
Well, after his arrest, the case was so strong that his confession, the forensic evidence, all of the other things that we had gathered, all led to a very solid conviction.
Rex Krebs had recently completed 10 years in prison for sexually assaulting 2 women. He was now going back behind bars for assaulting 2 more women, but this time, his prison cell was on death row. After abducting, abusing, and killing his victims, Rex Krebs buried their bodies in his backyard. Rachel Newhouse was eventually reburied at a local cemetery. And now, it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. For college students, nighttime is often a time for socializing, making new friends, and romantic connections. But unfortunately, with more independence comes more safety risks. Experts recommend that when going out with friends, stay with your group and don't leave anyone behind. Implement the buddy system to keep an eye on each other throughout the evening. Make plans for transportation to and from your destination, either a designated driver, public transportation, or a credible rideshare app. Avoid walking alone at night or catching a ride with a stranger. And limit your alcohol consumption so you're always able to stay alert and in control. And while this isn't an exhaustive list, you can find more tips and campus safety strategies on rain.org. For all of us here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.